telemetry, canal rehabilitation, groundwater discipline, climate resilience, and agricultural productivity. We are already on a national journey to protect every drop, measure every flow more accurately, and produce more value from the water we lawfully receive. The stronger Pakistan, of course, becomes at home, the clearer its message becomes abroad. We protect every drop we receive, and we will not accept coercion over any drop we are entitled to receive. Next. So this is the last slide of my presentation, where I would like to highlight the significance and importance to restore the framework. The treaty's answer to this stress which we have been discussing so far and will be discussing in the remaining sessions of today's seminar is basically not the abeyance, it is performance. The way forward is very clear. An immediate commission meeting, full restoration of Article 6 data, general and special tours and inspections, project record disclosure, including the drawing standard documents, schedules, hydraulic designs, and operating rules, and Article 9 discipline, beginning with the commission examination and ending with respect for the courts of arbitration and the neutral expert. No unilateral abeyance, no data blackout, no diversion, no fait accompli. The Indus Waters Treaty is alive. The Commission must be therefore allowed to work. The architecture and the operating records are now before the seminar, and the legal, humanitarian, diplomatic, and security consequences will be addressed by the distinguished speakers who follow. So I thank you all.
In the order of service, we are honoured to have the presence of Mr. Mosaddiq Malik, who I'd like to invite to the stage. Federal Minister for Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. As an accomplished public policy practitioner, he's previously held key ministerial portfolios in petroleum and energy, and now leads national efforts on climate resilience, environmental sustainability, biodiversity conservation, and international climate cooperation. He should be with us shortly to give us his thoughts. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Yesterday, I was doing a press talk, and I told the crisis in the life of a man in Pakistan. A man, a farmer, farming for about 7 to 8 generations, got devastated over the past 15 years. His name is Iqbal Solanki. He was a farmer. He got wiped out in the floods of 2010. He barely survived and came back to his farmland and got wiped out again in 2012. He left the farm for a while, tried to put food on the table for his children, and came back to farming once the water went down. And he was hit again in 2022. One flood after the other, his life got devastated. His livestock was washed away, his house was washed away, his children's schools was washed away, his family was displaced. And he finally gave up on farming and probably does some labor work somewhere in Karachi. Generations of farming lost to water. But what I didn't say yesterday is that Iqbal Solanki is not alone in this universe. If you look at the Bangladeshi farmers who wait for the water to flow, and if the water doesn't flow, then the fisherman starves. and the farmer cannot farm. Same story. In Sahil, at Sahil, a woman walks about 4 miles one way to get 1 bucket of water every day. And she is to walk 4 miles because the river that flew next to her village has pulled back. And has pulled back because someone upstream has stopped the flow of the water. Every day she walks 4 miles to get 1 bucket of water to bring back to her children. This is what she did yesterday. This is what she's doing today. And this is what she would be doing tomorrow. This is not a crisis in her life. This is her life. This is her life. And the Niles and the Tigris marshes and the story of the once Aral Sea, it's the same story. It's the exact same story of Iqbal Solanki. So not only is it the story of 120 million people in Pakistan who depend upon the farmlands, but it's a global story in Africa, in Bangladesh, by the flows of Mekong, everywhere it is the same story. We look at this story either as floods or droughts. But what we don't look at it is that it's not just the story of floods or scarcity of water. It's the story of water that you do not control. The danger is not just too little water or too much water. The danger is that someone else who is not you controls the tap through which your water is going to flow. My dear friend, Merali Shah, my colleague, he just showed you a graph. One day, the water flowing through Marala was 1,500 cusics. Then it became 78,000 cusics. And then it fell down to 1,500 cusics. And not one drop of rain to explain that. So the only thing that explains this phenomenon is that someone else, who's not Iqbal Solanki, has his hand on the tap that controls his water. And who pays? About 50% of our population depends upon agriculture. That's give or take 120 million people. 120 million people's livelihood depend upon this water. About a quarter of our GDP and 100% of our food security depends upon the flow of this water. So ladies and gentlemen, friends, this is neither a crisis of climate nor a crisis of water. This is a crisis of justice. And that's how we would like the world to see it. Solanki didn't build the dams. Solanki didn't break any treaty. Solanki didn't elect the man who controls the tap. And yet it's Solanki's life that gets devastated. This is the crisis of justice. And it's not just water tragedy. It's not just the water tragedy. I would like you to note that the same neighbor that controls this water flow or claims that it controls the water flows is the third largest polluter of the world, third largest. And let's make it simple. You pollute, greenhouse gases, temperatures rise, glaciers melt, downstream flooding. So the country that has created the furnace, which is burning the skies and burning the glaciers and affecting floods downstream, is the same country that then controls the tap, controls the flow of the water. Now, how just is that? You burn, you flood, and you know what that burning and flooding means for us? 6,000 people dead. Over the past 15 years, 6,000 people. 6,000 people haven't died in a single war. 19,000 people injured or disabled. And 40 million people displaced, 40 million, 40, larger than most countries in Europe. Displaced for months, for 6 months. And if they're displaced for 3 months, 90 days, given our demography, 1.8 billion school days are lost. Imagine your child not going to school for 1 month. 1.8 billion school days lost. Because someone else decides when the water is going to flow and flood you. Someone else decides when the water is going to be stopped to the extent that your soil cracks because of dryness and is rendered useless forever. Someone else decides that. That is the crisis that we are talking about today. We have a treaty for this. We call it Indus Water Treaty, which is why we are all here today. When you want to test law, you test the law at its weakest point, not the strongest point. And this treaty is one of the strongest treaties of the world, not the weakest treaty. Let me say it again. If you want to test a policy or you want to test a law, you test it at its weakest point where it breaks to make sure that the justice is delivered. Now here, this is the strongest treaty the world has seen. It has survived 3 wars between 2 nuclear powers. If this treaty doesn't hold, ladies and gentlemen, no treaty in the world is worth the weight of the paper on which it's published. No world order post-Second World War holds today if this treaty doesn't hold. Because the order that we created after the Second World War, it all came out of these treaties. So what is the value of a treaty if one powerful country, and we don't consider them powerful, but one powerful country one day gets up and says, the treaty, well, it may well be, but it doesn't apply to me. And I unilaterally put it in abeyance or suspend it or walk out of it. This is what previously led to genocides. This is why the world came together and weaved itself into these web of treaties. And one of the strongest treaties in the world, one country just gets up and says it doesn't hold anymore. I always pronounce it wrong, and I have my very dear friend Amar Bilal Sufi. We go way back to school days. So I'm going to, in his presence, pronounce it wrong. What is it? Pacta sunt servanda? The treaties must hold. So my view is, ladies and gentlemen, it is not that the treaty has been suspended or put in abeyance. It is simply that the treaty has been revealed. And that's all there is to it. The treaty has not been put in abeyance. The treaty has been revealed to the world. Our friends went to the court, we went to the court, And the court upheld their point of view. I mean, there have been court has given mixed judgments. Sometimes they favored us, sometimes they favored our neighboring countries, and everyone said, all right, we'll go with whatever the international courts are saying. Now here the court passed a judgment and put limits on the technical design, on the flow of water, put natural limits and decided this is how it's going to be organized. No one country can unilaterally decide what the design is going to be. No one country is going to decide how they're going to stop the flow of water from one country to another. And guess what? The country got up and said, I don't accept the jurisdiction. I don't accept the jurisdiction? So what is the jurisdiction of international courts of justice? None. So does it mean tomorrow anyone can get up, any nuclear state can get up and say, hell be upon you, I don't accept your jurisdiction, I don't accept the world order, I don't accept treaties, I don't accept rights, I don't accept justice. I just don't accept. So ladies and gentlemen, to me, the treaty has been revealed. And in that, all treaties of the world have been revealed. So this is not a message for us. We can take care of ourselves as we have seen. No one can stop our water. But what about the rest of the world? If this precedent has been set, and if the new world order is in accordance with this new precedent, then what about the rest of the world, is my question. The water that flows through the Netherlands is French water, is Swiss water, and is German water before it becomes the Dutch water. So what about that? The water that goes to Portugal is Spain's water. What about that? So essentially, this new order that is being proposed is that no downstream country in the world has any water rights. This is not Pakistan's case. This is the case and test for water rights for all downstream billions and billions and billions of people who live downstream. It's a decision whether they're going to have, as our neighbors say, a drop of water flow through their country. That's the test that we're putting to the table today. Whether it's Hungarian Tietsa, which was poisoned in another country, or it's Niles, or it's Dunabe, which goes through 19 different countries. Every country is downstream of some other country. So no country in the world after this has any rights to water, and no recourse either. Because any country can get up and say, I don't accept the jurisdiction. I do not accept the jurisdiction of this court. So this is a question that I put in front of all of you. Every other element of the world, you have organizations and laws that govern trade. You have organizations and laws that control nuclear proliferation. And you have no laws for water. You have no laws for agriculture, for food, for drinking water. What are you going to trade? What laws? So what am I urging us to do in our togetherness, all of the international experts today? No more declarations. It's tiring to go to these United Nations fora and come up with one declaration, non-binding declaration after another. There must be a covenant which has political consequences, which has economic consequences, which has diplomatic consequences. So rise now or hold your peace forever.
बाकी वज़ीर मुसद्दिक़ मलिक का संतास मुआहिदे के बैनुल-अक़वामी सेमिनार से खिताब जारी था। उन्होंने कहा कि असल मसला पानी का कंट्रोल करके बतौर हथियार इस्तेमाल करना है। पाकिस्तान वाज़े कर चुका है कि वो अपने हिस्से के पानी पर समझौता नहीं करेगा। मुसद्दिक़ मलिक का मज़ीद कहना था कि दुनिया भर में पानी नीचे की तरफ बहता है और मुख्तलिफ रास्तों से गुजरता है। आज तक दुनिया के किसी मुल्क ने पानी का बहाव कंट्रोल करने की कोशिश नहीं की।
Who is going to enlighten us on treaty procedures and international law foundations, good faith, compliance and conflict prevention under the Indus Waters Treaty. Mr. Sufi.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Federal Minister for Climate Change, Honorable Federal Minister for Information, Honorable Chair, experts, diplomats, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good morning. The learned minister provoked some legal points, innovation. And I think when he said that the water, there is no right over water, if I can develop it further, basically there is no title to water of any state. If you remember, they are called global commons. The SDGs and international law treats space, air, water as a common heritage of mankind. That is exactly what 1982 Law of the Sea Convention tells us, that they are common heritage of mankind. So the waters flowing from the glaciers downwards towards states who could be upper, lower, or multiple states, no state can validly claim title of water. It's a common right. It has to be used by all. With this fundamental feature inherent, it is obvious that a water flowing from one country to another can't be stopped or diverted by its very nature. And that is one reason why we come to this conclusion that in all treaties that have been executed between upper and lower riparian, the just use principle or entitlement of use of water by each has been enshrined and codified. The Indus Water Treaty is no exception to it. So what Mr. Meher Ali Shah identified as Article 3, the core obligation, it links up in a jurisprudence sense with this equal use of water and absence of title to any country, to any state, that the water will be allowed to let flow into Pakistan without any interference. And the interference exceptions have been identified. And then, despite that, and what are those exceptions? Of course, despite those exceptions, you will let the water flow. And when you are making any hydro projects, any pondages, then you guarantee a low riparian through an Indus Water Treaty or any similar treaty that, look, we are making this pondage, this hydro project for our use in our territory that we need. There are people who require electricity. There are people for whose agriculture we require that. Don't you worry, your water will continue to flow. So that's the assurance, that's the guarantee implicit in the Indus Water Treaty, and that is why several projects were allowed to happen, and to ensure the engineering drawings were commented upon, discussed, even taken to judicial forums as and when required, but the very project itself was not criticized, was not pushed back by Pakistan. Now the situation has dramatically changed, ladies and gentlemen. In May last year, India says we are holding it in abeyance. holding in abeyance from an international law point of view is an admission of a breach of a treaty. If you say, I'm holding a treaty in abeyance, you're fashioning a terminology to walk away from the core obligations of the treaty. You're identifying a term which is stranger to the water law jurisprudence or even Vienna Convention and the laws of treaty, where either you would suspend or you would terminate, or you would at best not walk out of it, but use the exceptions within to argue your point of view. But if you are saying yourself that we are holding it abeyance to an international law, this is an admission of the breach of a bilateral treaty. For Pakistan, it holds the field, and we use its baseline to comment. That is strategy 1. The strategy 2 is that they are no longer linking this matter to the treaty formulation. The absence of good faith tells us Indians are linking it holistically to other issues that are again extraneous to the treaty. Terrorism. Terrorism is a matter that Security Council is already seized of by virtue of UNSC Resolution 1373, which forces obligations on all member states to counter acts of terrorism through judicial process, legislation, and executive action. And Pakistan has done that post-Mumbai. Most of these people who were suspected, their properties have been seized. They have been struggling, going to courts, asking for permissions to travel and so on. And their reports have been filed by Pakistan to CTC, Counter-Terrorism Committee, consistently. So Pakistan was then evaluated under FATF, and whatever deficiencies in law enforcement mechanism were to counter terrorism, they were fulfilled. Whether they were SCCP framework, State Bank framework, and even Pakistan developed mutual legal assistance law just 2-3 years ago, the standalone MLA law. India, on the other hand, does not have MLA. So if Pahalgam happened, they only have one provision in their criminal procedure code entitling them to send requests to Pakistan for investigation or for cooperation in investigation. If Pahalgam, when happened, the true course of action available to them was to write a letter to the state of Pakistan pursuant to 1273 and under Section 19 of the Mutual Legal Assistance Act of Pakistan, insisting that Pakistan provides relevant information, joint investigation, or whatever information that they had, pass it on to us and say, cooperate. Had we not cooperated, which we couldn't, we had to, whatever that meant at that point in time. But they chose, instead of lawfare, warfare. They decided they will attack Pakistan. And as part of the package, they announced a hostility environment between the state of Pakistan and the state of India. Operation Sindoor is an operational term used by them. And when they say it is not over, the reason is, to me, as an international law person, it comes across as a situation of war is continuing from Indian side unilaterally on Pakistan, and Indus Water Treaty holding in its base is a subset of that war strategy. They are launching this war from Afghanistan side, the proxies who come in. They're launching this war through other means by incorporating Kashmir territory. They're launching this war against other measures. And now IWT holding in abeyance is partially because, in their reckoning, since they have claimed the territory of the Kashmir under Article 370, pursuant to Presidential Order of 5th August 2019, and they have got it verified by the Supreme Court of India. So in their reckoning, they claim the territory over which Kashmir, over which Indus and other waters flow. And it is in their strategic calculation one way to dislodge IWT as well, remove it off. And when they do that, which they have done, it is a serious wrong under articles of state responsibility which were prepared by International Law Commission, which, and you can clearly demonstrate without much arguments that this holding in abeyance tantamounts to a serious international wrong which permits Pakistan countermeasures, both coercive and non-coercive in nature. Pakistan has been exercising restraint as much as it can. It will continue to do so. It will continue to exercise lawfare measures, which mean writing to the UN Security Council, to the P5 members, because it is no longer a treaty matter, ladies and gentlemen. It has become an issue of the UN Charter, where there is a threat to regional peace and security. So the jurisdictional mandate, apart from judicial apparatus under IWT, is now with the P5, is by with the Security Council and the Office of the UN Secretary General, because it is his office who has to take cognizance that a situation is deteriorating in subcontinent between two countries, and deteriorating fast. And there have been multiple efforts being made to salvage, and the state of Pakistan, through its ministers, its prime ministers, its military chief, has made it known to the global community that we will be left with no choice except to resort to certain measures that we don't want to. And in that case as well, in another seminar, we were discussing that, yes, dams and dikes are traditionally protected sites under Geneva Convention, Additional Protocol, Article 1, Article 56, 52 to be specific, for the reason that mischief escapes from them and that causes a lot of damage to civilian property. But up to the point when the pondage is filled with water, the protection is not triggered. So you have a time zone of considering extreme actions that, as I said, Pakistan will be reluctant. So it's become an issue of the UN Charter that the situation between India and Pakistan is deteriorating fast, and the pretext remains the IWT. It's a larger frame of an armed conflict that India has imposed upon us, and it is using various measures, and IWT continues to be a subset of that war framework. I also suggested in one of my write-ups, and we did it when the PMLN government was there last time in 2016, I believe, an idea of legal diplomacy between India and Pakistan. And the recommendation was we organized a seminar, and in that seminar, we even invited people from the Indian High Commission, and we said that we issued several issues, Kashmir, Siachen, Sir Creek, have partially legal dimensions to them. Each issue has a legal angle to it. So let's legal sides on both the sides, legal team on both the sides, sit together and examine if they can hammer out various options from a legal point of view and then present it to the political leadership. But again, as I said, the responses do not seem to be. So the rule book, what India has to also realize that if it moves away from the global rule book, the treaties that we are talking about are not 1, 2, 3, they are a stack of treaties, ladies and gentlemen. And if you go to the UN Treaty Series website, you will be taken aback that there are millions of treaties. They constitute the rule book of global order, not 1 or 2. The more you move away from the rule book of global order, the more you lose credibility and standing, the more you bear cost. President Trump, we remember when he said statement on Alaska and Canada, the cost was evident. The allies began to move away. So irresponsible attitude from the Indian side on a treaty, which is otherwise known to be a boundary treaty, which is otherwise known to be given enhanced sanctity under Vienna Convention and customary norms, is that they are beginning to bear the cost of being alienated. And one reason why Pakistan is leading in the regional discussions and alternative dispute resolution mechanism is because Pakistan wants to behave as reasonably as possible, as legally correct as possible, and that is how its teams and its measures are responding to that. So my concluding remarks would be that there is absence of good faith on the part of our Indian neighbor, and we sense it very clearly. The biggest evidence is the holding in abeyance. The problem that people talk to us and they ask us in streets, in the courts where I move, in other events, that why is India doing all this? Why is that they don't understand? They have international lawyers. There is an Indian Society of International Law. So aren't they telling them that they are, and I say this has been politically driven. It was part of the agenda in 2016 when President Modi came to power. He talked about two distinct things. One was that we will remove Article 370 and then we will get rid of Indus Water Treaty as well. And that is how they are moving in that direction, irrespective of the legal inherent obligations that they have to face. So I'll stop here, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope that our neighbor senses this, that not only we have an obligation to let flow the water, we have an obligation also not to disturb the water flow, otherwise it will affect the agriculture, it will affect and inflict the possibility of starvation, for which we will have dreadful consequences. Once again, thank you very much.
माहिर बैनुल-अक़वामी उमूर अहमद बिलाल सूफ़ी का खिताब जारी था। उन्होंने कहा कि दुनिया भर में पानी, हवा, खुराक को बुनियादी इंसानी ज़रूरियात करार दिया जा चुका है। भारत का सिंतास मुआहिदे को गैर मौजूदा हालत में रखना गैर कानूनी है। भारत सिंतास मुआहिदे को दूसरे उमूर से मुंसलिक कर रहा है। पहलगाम वाक़े के बाद पाकिस्तान को मालूमात
University of World Civilizations, Moscow, the distinguished professor, Dr. Roxolana Zigon, Professor Zigon, who is going to enlighten us on IWT, Foundation for Peace and Security in South Asia, a foreign, legal and humanitarian perspective.
Dear guests, Honorable Minister of Information and Broadcasting, Minister of Climate and former Minister of Law of Pakistan, Mr. Sufi. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for having a unique opportunity to participate in this important event, which is aimed at discussing a completely new scenario that we're facing in relation to India and Pakistan relations and the role that the Indus Water Treaty is playing in order to depict a new reality we're all standing in front of. Because the case that we are overviewing here is not connected just to the dispute, waters dispute, between Pakistan and India. As it was correctly marked by my colleagues before, it has to do with every state and every nation of the global community today. Unfortunately, we have been witnessing for the last years and decades a serious deterioration of the international relations system. And my colleagues have wonderfully described the failures that we have been observing in relation to the UN, to the international legal system, to address the burning issues of the modern days. While listening to the previous speeches, I have marked to myself a key word that I would like to carry forward. Mr. Sufi has mentioned the word faith, the lack of trust, the failures of the neighbor. And I would like to start my speech that I would like to address to the esteemed audience with the following words: faith, unity, discipline. Faith is the national motto of Pakistan, the guiding principle of Pakistani nationhood. It is derived from the principles laid down by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founding father of Pakistan. And I do believe that it's not accidental that this seminar is taking place in the Jinnah Convention Center, which has been hosting recently Islamabad peace talks that confirms and defines a special posture of Pakistan in direction of proclaiming and promoting diplomatic efforts for the global community. For 79 years since the day of liberation from the British rule and the establishment of the independent state of Pakistan in 1947, it has been falling for this vision of faith, unity, and discipline, with the inner strength and courage. These principles were integrated in every drop of the Pakistani blood and its national DNA. It means that the Pakistani nationhood has succeeded to pass a historical resilience test and win a fight for sovereignty, self-identity, and independence with dignity and strong vision. I have quoted these principles and placed them into privileged position as their perfect introduction to the topic of my insight today. Indus Waters Treaty, Foundation for Peace and Security in South Asia. Foreign, legal, and humanitarian perspectives. They can be flawlessly applied to every word of this title and highlight an importance of the Foundation for Peace and Security retention in South Asia. Unfortunately, Indus waters bring different sound and meaning of these principles for India, that has unilaterally suspended the 66-year-old Indus Waters Treaty with Pakistan since last year's conflict in Pahalgam in April 2025, escalating a long-standing bilateral dispute and raising concerns over legal and humanitarian perspectives for sustaining peace and security in the South Asia. India's foreign ministry said on the 5th of June that treaty would stay suspended until Pakistan completely stops cross-border terrorism. It appears as provocative and aggressive as the statement of the India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi that blood and water cannot flow together. It is his signature policy stance linking India's water sharing rights with Pakistan to cross-border terrorism. It asserts that India will not continue standard diplomatic cooperation and resource sharing while enduring violent attacks. Recently, the Union Minister of Water Resources, Mr. Patil, stated that the Indian government is actively working to ensure that not a single drop of water will go to Pakistan in the coming years. This rhetoric poisons not just the sacred Indus waters, but the very ground of the international law. The Indus Waters Treaty governs the use of the rivers in the Indus Basin, which is shared by India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and China. Under the agreement, India has unrestricted access to the basin's eastern rivers, while Pakistan receives rights to the western rivers. Every 9 in every 10 Pakistanis live within the Indus Basin today. Its rivers irrigate more than 90% of the country's crops and generate most of its hydroelectric power. All 21 of Pakistan's hydroelectric plants are located within the basin, and they are load-bearing pillars of a fragile economy that is in need of being technologically boosted and secured. India doesn't even need to cut all flows to inflict damage to Pakistan. Manipulating the timing of releases from dams on the western rivers could flood Pakistani farmland during planting seasons, while withholding water during critical irrigation windows could devastate harvests. Pakistan has already written to India twice in 2025 and once in May 2026 about abnormal, abrupt flow variations of the Chenab. Therefore, an opportunity to settle the issue through dialogue and diplomacy is reducing day after day. In the short term, reduced India-Pakistan coordination on river flow data, forecasting, and technical communication will likely increase uncertainty and crisis volatility without significantly limiting actual water flows. In the longer term, potential upstream infrastructure expansion and climate stress could increase structural instability and intensify crisis dynamics between the two nuclear states. In fact, India is seeking to weaponize water through infrastructure projects. And it was mentioned very correctly by my colleague that it's not a conversation about a single dam or construction. We are talking about the whole cluster of illegal constructions there, breaking the legal framework of the Indus Treaty waters. This follows remarks in April by Pakistan's Planning Minister Ahsan Iqbal that the country had only about 90 days of water storage capacity. This falls well below regional and global benchmarks, with regional economies typically maintaining more than 120 days of storage and the global benchmark standing at roughly 300 days. Cutting flows would have serious implications for Pakistan's agriculture and overall economy, but any project would take several years before it has an impact. Pakistan has previously said it would consider any attempt to change the flow of cross-border waterways as an act of war, saying that the 160 treaty remained in force as there was no mechanism to unilaterally withdraw from it. It had also urged the UN Security Council to take up the dispute over the Indus Waters Treaty, warning that India's continuous unilateral suspension of the treaty carries grave peace and security as well as humanitarian consequences for the whole South Asia. We should remember, all of us, that internationally the Indus Waters Treaty is widely celebrated and recognized as one of the most durable transboundary water sharing mechanisms in history, brokered by the World Bank and established as a framework that successfully insulated vital resource management from broader geopolitical hostility for over 6 decades. There is a global perspective on the Indus Water Treaty, which is defined by several key elements or pillars. First of all, this treaty should stay in consideration with a separation over integration. What does it mean? Unlike treaties that require joint management of an entire river, the Indus Waters Treaty essentially separated or divorced the river systems. It allocated the 3 eastern rivers, Ravi, Beas and Sutlej, entirely to India, and the 3 western rivers, Indus, Jhelum and Chenab, to Pakistan. This separation is the key reason for its long-term resilience. The treaty also created the Permanent Indus Commission, which mandates regular commissioner meetings. This channel is a vital conflict management mechanism that survived multiple full-scale wars and prolonged diplomatic frictions between India and Pakistan. The Indus Waters Treaty stands as a strong pillar of the multilateral mediation power. It provided a formalized 3-step dispute resolution pattern involving Permanent Indus Commission, neutral experts, and the Court of Arbitration. However, we should keep in mind that the Indus Waters Treaty shouldn't be viewed as a division of waters, as it was the case of division of land during the partition of 1947, but rather as a mode of cooperation on water sharing. At the edge of the New World Order settlement, the very idea of division and hostile hegemony, as dangerous and non-perspective as the extreme unification of the ultra-global liberalism. While promoting the unilateral actions and international law violation, Indian policymakers are undermining their authority and title of the reliable and privileged partner within BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Blood and water doesn't flow together, but blood consists of 92% of water. You can't split it. You can only spill it. The Indus Waters Treaty has proved to be an outstanding example of cooperation between Pakistan and India for the whole global community over the past 6 decades. And all the attempts to demolish it due to geopolitical ambitions of India appear to be a highly vicious provocation and stance against fragile stability in the South Asia, which is tightly linked with the whole architecture of security in the Middle East. Being a strategic partner of Israel, India has taken a destructive path towards violent transboundary expansion of its national interest and goals by the means of ultimatums, dictatorship, and warmongering. Increasing Pakistani needs and the continuing building of hydropower dams by India on the western rivers Chenab may further threaten the treaty, which has no exit strategy. Water issue is a core issue between the two countries because, first of all, it is related to the disputed Jammu and Kashmir issue, and secondly, Pakistan is dependent on the single river basin, which its economy, agriculture, and energy needs to rely on. The regional text of the Indus Waters Treaty lacks adaptive management strategies for emerging global issues, such as accelerating climate change, changing hydrological patterns, and population growth. The unilateral actions of India can provoke an erosion of international norms. Unilateral changes threaten fundamental tenets of the customary international law, the principles of equitable and reasonable utilization, and the obligation not to cause significant harm. Powerful nation, or we have decided not to name India a powerful nation, conditionally powerful nations may utilize or bypass legal space to legitimize structural asymmetries, framing water access projects strictly through national security rather than shared responsibility. Undoubtedly, interference with cross-border flows is viewed as a direct threat to survival and economic stability of the affected populations. It can create critical and cause actually humanitarian challenges. Its health and sanitation problem. Upstream pollution or water diversions directly impact the drinking water and sanitation safety of downstream communities. It affects livelihoods and food security of Pakistan. Therefore, all sort of unilateral actions of India, such as constructing dams or shrinking water supplies, threaten food security and economic stability of Pakistan. The Indus Waters Treaty dispute resolution mechanism undoubtedly should be modernized according to the changing environmental and demographic realities on both sides of the border to bring it move in line with contemporary international water course law that defines the use and conservation of all waters that cross international boundaries, including both surface and groundwaters. However, taking into consideration that there is no strong political will from the side of India to make joint management of the Indus Basin possible without weaponization of the issue, there is a need to reassess the very ground from the perspective of Pakistan's rights to protect its national interest, geoeconomic, humanitarian sustainability, such as launching an Islamabad Indus Waters Global Forum, I think that this seminar can become a beginning of this process that can help to address to the broader international audience the importance.
भारत पाकिस्तान को पानी के मुताबिक भारतीय वज़ीर आज़म मोदी ने हुक्काम को दरिया
Definitely, India tries to undermine significant pillars of the security architecture in the region of South Asia. By demolishing Indus Waters Treaty, it wishes to change the geopolitical course in its favor by the hybrid forms of violating geostrategic balance and geoeconomic stability in the South Asia. While creating obstacles and hurdles on the way of Pakistan to become an important regional player, it targets to create multiple red lines for Pakistan in order to prevent its expansion of its presence and influence in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and possible entrance to the BRICS format. Pakistan has all the authorities, all the capacities, and a strong political will to show when those red lights start and where they may end. As there is an undeniable stance, Indus waters do not drift backwards. They flow equally for both parties, being the vital blood vascular system for all. Thank you very much.
माहिर डॉक्टर रॉस्कोलाना जिकॉन का खिताब जारी था। उन्होंने कहा कि मुआहदे ने 6 दहाइयों तक पाक भारत कशीदगी के बावजूद आबी ताउन बरकरार रखा। मुआहदे के तहत भारत को मशरिकी जबकि पाकिस्तान को मगरबी दरियाओं के पानी के इस्तेमाल का हक हासिल है।
Turn this on.
Can you all hear me? There we go. We're going to open the floor for some questions and comments. Just a couple of things that I request from you. If you could briefly introduce yourself and where possible, if you could direct your question to one of our lovely speakers. I'm going to request our chair, Mr. Khurram Dastagir, to kindly moderate the Q&A session, please.
Do we have any inquisitive mind to ask questions from our distinguished panelists? There is one. Please introduce yourself and please be brief.
I will be brief. I am Abdullah Khan, Managing Director, Pakistan Institute for Conflict and Security Studies. My question is from the Commissioner of Indus Waters Treaty. You said in your presentation that India has stopped cooperating with Pakistan since 2023. So what was your commission and the government of Pakistan doing during this period? And my second question is from Ahmad Bilal Sufi Saab. That as per international law, and Dr. Mosaddiq Malik has also highlighted that downstream countries have a legitimate right on the rivers. But we have given a right of 3 rivers to India, all kind of rights, and they have diverted that. So don't you think that India has provided us to reclaim our right on the eastern 3 rivers? If India is running away from this treaty, so why should not we claim the lost rivers which we had lost to India in 1960? Thank you very much.
Commissioner Shah, if you will respond, please.
So your question is that, what the Commission was doing when they stopped cooperating under the framework of the treaty. So I just want to share with you that basically there is a background of this non-cooperation from the Indian side because Pakistan started the arbitral proceedings back in 2016, which were paused by the World Bank for 6 good or bad years. And eventually, in the month of November 2022, the bank constituted the Court of Arbitration. And as a consequence of the empanelment of the Court of Arbitration, which India felt that it is going to be, not very positive, to protect the India's interest. So therefore, they stopped the cooperation. And fortunately, by that time, Pakistan's commission as well as the government of Pakistan was in front